This is the M6P, and this is also Back to Books. We're going to be hitting up Kraven's Last Hunt. I'm Jared. We got Darrin, John, and Kevin. Darrin, why don't you take us away, man?
Super excited for this one. Kraven's Last Hunt. Wow, that was dark. We got scenes of suicide. Whoa, there it is. Like the whole thing was dark, madness, mental illness, people thinking they're crazy and eating spiders, crawling down the panel, all sorts of stuff. Mike Zeck. I mean, we always talk about him on the Facebook page and stuff like that. Wow. 6 covers splitting across, what was that? 3 different Spider-Man series, Web of Spider-Man, the Spectacular Peter Parker Spider-Man, something like that. And then Amazing Spider-Man. Good stuff. Loved it all. I'm not going to remember the issue numbers right offhand, but I knew it came from those 3 books. So, and this was black suit stuff. And it was a very, wow. Was it 92? Wow.
87.
87. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was off. Anyways, late 80s, early 90s. Got you. So good stuff there. Wow. Era of the times. Like, whew, those were the books that I was growing up, late 80s, early 90s, that like I had a bunch of random Marvel comic books I got wherever somebody bought them for me. And I'm looking at them like, I can't believe my mom hasn't looked at this. Like, especially the Punisher books, that era. But no, man, this was some dark stuff, but it was so good. It was so good. This is out of all the B2B episodes, this one, I don't know, there was so many things in this one that made me uncomfortable. Oh yeah, I love it. All right, that's my initial thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So by the way, hold on, Jared. I got a surprise. Look what.
Thank you for your $2. I appreciate it.
Hydro Man ran.
You can get yours at T Public. There you go, guys. Wait for a sell. It's not worth it otherwise. All right.
Wow, how do I follow that, man? So this was the first time I'd ever read Kraven's Last Hunt, which really surprised me. Like I thought that I had read all the big Marvel stuff, and I had not read this one. So at a flight, and I was able to knock out the whole thing on the airplane. It was because it was a pretty smooth read. So much of it is just art, looking at these spiders and Kraven running around naked and all that kind of stuff. Didn't leave a lot of space for word bubbles. But I was really impressed. As I would read through it, I kept saying, so how did the writer communicate this to the artist? Or like there was just so many, he said so much just in the art, but then also there was a lot of word bubbles about the inner monologue that Kraven was going through. How did he put that on paper? Just boggled my mind how he was able to do that. Did they have a lot of communication with each other, or was it just he gave him the script and he went for it and came out with this masterpiece? But it definitely was a masterpiece.
I would bet they had a shorthand because they had a long stint together on Captain America, because that's where they actually came up with the Vermin character that was in this, was on the Captain America run. So I'm sure they worked together enough. They had somewhat of a shorthand.
That was my initial thoughts. It was just, how did they pull this off?
What's it say?
Well, it says, I love it when a plan comes together.
So my initial thoughts, I think this is the 3rd or 4th time I've read this. I read individual issues as probably when I was a teenager. I found them. I don't think I had the Spectacular Spider-Man stuff, so mainly like the Venom or the Vermin storyline. That's really where that one sits. So I didn't really have that. So I just kind of had the other 4 issues. And for me, when I first read those, I hadn't read Watchmen yet. I hadn't read The Dark Knight. This was, or The Dark Knight Rises. This was kind of my first, time really seeing the characters that I loved portrayed in such an adult, mature fashion. Really, um, you know, um, my teachers in high school were impressed that I knew who William Blake's the Tiger was, and it's all from this series, the Fearful Symmetry. I knew exactly what that was when I was in high school. So like this is a pretty big one for me, and especially in like opening my mind to what comics could do, especially like Spider-Man was always a kid's comic to me, even at the time when I read this, as much as I loved it. So it was seeing it as in more mature tones was really impactful for me. um and yeah, no, I love this series, or I love this run. um I do think the Venom story excuse me. I do think the Venom story is a little tacked on. Like there wasn't a big battle at the end, and they're like, "We can't have a Spider-Man and story and not have him have a fight with anybody." I mean, I think it's integrated well, but I think if it does feel like an afterthought. That's my only
You mean the Vermin?
minor. Yeah, Vermin. It's Venom. Sorry,
Yeah.
guys. COVID brain. I apologize.
It's all
Um,
right.
so yeah, that's my only little tiny critique with it. Even then, I still enjoyed every panel on every issue, reading it over this time.
Yeah, good stuff. I think we all agree. This was it was a great story. A lot of some of the other back to books that we've done have been big superhero stories with lots and lots of characters doing little things. This was Spider-Man and Kraven. Vermin, even to Kevin's point, was kind of the minor character. I think he was more of a plot device for Kraven to become Spider-Man and beat somebody that Spider-Man could not beat without the help of Captain America. Like you said, that's where that storyline's from. Spider-Man and Captain America had to team up in order to take him down. So Kraven said, not only am I going to beat Spider-Man, I'm going to take down somebody he couldn't do by himself. And he did, and he captured him. So I think that, but then at the end, that Spider-Man just has to beat him. Right. So the finale was really the Kraven part. Kraven and Spider-Man's last interaction was a better finale, but then you just couldn't leave that loose end out there. So it didn't close on the strongest note, but it was still a great story throughout. I love the Mike Zeck art in this. I think this is we did Secret Wars. This to me was better than that. And again, for the same reason, because I think he was too spread out, trying to draw too many characters on a panel. His covers were great in Secret Wars. His interior art on this was way better to me. Even the coloring seemed to be more painted almost than just your typical comic. There was more shading and light and shadow use. I'm going to tell you guys that when I was researching this, here's a fun fact. The J.M. DeMatteis, the writer of this, he tried to pitch this 2 other times. Did you guys know that? The original time that he pitched it, it was a Wonder Man story.
Oh, the first time was Batman and Joker.
Joker was the second time, but it was Wonder Man, and the Grim Reaper buried Wonder Man alive, and Wonder Man would be able to survive that, so he didn't need to do the dart and everything. But that got shot down. Batman and the Joker, they were doing Dark Knight and the Killing Joke, so they said no. And then when he took over Spider-Man, it is interesting because Spider-Man's not typically dark. And all of those other stories that were going on at the time in comics were a lot of dark heroes. This was a dark story, but Peter Parker still doesn't go dark, really. He doesn't kill anybody. He doesn't go, even when Kraven first takes over and you see him beating up the bad guys to save Mary Jane. She's like, that's not Peter. That's not who he is. Yeah. So Spider-Man's personality still came through in this story, even though it was one of his darker ones. And I really thought that was just another element that was super well done in this whole story.
Can I say one thing, because you mentioned how good the coloring was in this?
Yeah.
If you read the digital version, the latest versions that are on like Marvel and on Comixology, the artwork looks like it's or the coloring looks like it's done with colored pencils. It reminds me of there was like this like D-tier comic series called The Warriors of Plasma, and I always remember how like bad the coloring looked in that. And I think I think something's happened in the transfer. Maybe they had to recolor it and they rushed the coloring. But I would recommend to anybody who hasn't read this before, make sure your first time is actually find the original issues or find like a good trade that was, you know, printed about 10 years ago, to get the good colors. Because yeah, the digital copies, the coloring is kind of weak.
Right. Even I did read this time through Marvel Unlimited, and it did seem brighter than I remember reading it the first time. And definitely with all the covers I've seen over the years. But the interior did look a little brighter, like it was remastered or touched up or something. So.
All right. Does anybody else have anything to say about? All right, let's move on. All right, I wanted to talk about this. You guys mentioned it early. Fine. This is my second topic of discussion was Vermin as a plot device. Certainly was, but wasn't that a cool plot device? I mean, like when it starts off, there's just like, okay, so we got this whole storyline about, you know, Kraven hunting, going mad, hunting about Spider-Man or whatever, and then the plot device is just terrifying me. Snatching people off the street, it's a cannibal, like. And like this whole to be blunt, this whole series was kind of woo. But that was the first scary part, certainly so. And then just yeah, there's some cannibal runner. Oh, Captain America and Spider-Man couldn't even take him down. And then Kraven's like, and then he tries to prove his jam, and I guess he does, captures him. He should have killed him. But he captures him and then leaves him spoiler alert for Spider-Man. I don't know. Vermin was cool. I liked Vermin a lot. I don't know. It's just such a random characters. It was so unnecessary, but maybe that's why it worked so good. His character, I don't know. I like the simplicity of this whole storyline. It was such a, you know, all we see is you gotta have all these major tie-ins and all this horse junk. So to see an actual Spider-Man story, I guess from the era we all grew up in, like this, that was awesome. And then Vermin was cool. I don't know why that was cool. Normally I wouldn't care about a villain like that, but as a plot device, that's the best plot device I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Right.
Vermin was good because he was creepy, he was cool, and it made sense that Kraven would be able to capture an animalistic villain easier than Spider-Man would. It's not about who's stronger, maybe Vermin's stronger, but all Kraven does is hunt animals. So if this guy acts like a rat or whatever animal, werewolf, well, he's a rat wolf, were-rat kind of person, whatever he is. And yeah, Kraven's going to be a perfect guy to catch him easier than Spider-Man would. He understands animals, how they think, what their brains do. So he does have that advantage for it. And yeah, he was scary looking. He was almost sympathetic at times. He was a good third character for this story. Yes.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, and I had always thought this series was just Kraven and Spider-Man. I didn't realize there was anyone else in it. So when he came in those first few pages, I thought, well, I'm not really interested in a Vermin story. This has nothing to do with Kraven's Last Hunt. And then he abducts the first lady, and then maybe it's like 2 pages later, she's not there. And I didn't make the connection. I was like, huge plot
That's
hole. Like
dark.
this lady was in the sewer. Like they just didn't ignore. Oh, he ate her. What? It just so I thought Vermin was pretty pretty sweet. I liked him.
Yeah, not like with my earlier criticism, I don't want to say anything negative necessarily against Vermin. I think they did end up nerfing him in future Spectacular Spider-Man runs, and I didn't really care for that for those stories. I think my biggest criticism is that it should have ended after 5 issues. Like John was saying, that 6th issue, I think it was like an epilogue. It didn't really need to be part of the whole story for me. Like the story finished after part 5. Kraven, when Kraven, you know, commits suicide, you'll have to bleep that out in case you ever want to get monetized. The you know, that to me is the end of the story. That's the part that really interests me. Can Spider-Man, you know, after 2 weeks in the ground, can he actually beat vermin? I don't know. I didn't really buy that part of the story as much.
Right? That's the only reason he survived for 2 weeks under the ground. He had the symbiote, right? This is the Black Suit era. Wait,
No,
Yeah.
Wait,
Symbiote.
was
no,
way
he
off?
didn't have
The symbionts in the Fantastic Four's fridge or whatever, wherever he's being kept at the
right.
time.
The Baxter
Yeah,
building.
yeah.
He
All
was
you ever have to do,
tranquilized
all you ever
for
have
two
to do
weeks.
is look up the first appearance of the Amazing Baghead, and you'll find out when the symbiote spider. And I think it was
Here we go.
359, and this was 380 something. So it was right, yeah, it was right before Todd McFarlane or whatever jumped on and they
Two.
created Venom.
Right. It was a
Two,
250.
yeah,
and
yeah,
280.
250,
252 was
280.
the
Sorry,
first
yes.
appearance of it, but
I thought it was the
because it was
symbiote.
Secret Wars. Go ahead. Because it was the Secret Wars, which was probably, what did we say when we covered that? 84. So
Yeah.
now we're in 87. So, but they said their
30 to 20 issues. That makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, their explanation was that the tranquilizer was enough to slow his heart rate and breathing down for him to survive. That he didn't need. That's why he survived for 2 weeks. That and his radioactive spider blood probably helped. I would imagine.
Yeah, and I do remember in comic stores as a kid, people talking about how Spider-Man only survived because of the symbiote. So I mean,
Okay. All right.
that was something that people. I mean, I had that in my head too after reading this, and I had to go look it up. And I think even was it Spider-Man's life story, that series that Chip Zdarsky just did. I think he retells a portion of the story, or kind of does a what if version, and gives Spider-Man the symbiote, and that's how he survives in that one too.
I thought it was interesting. He got married the day before. If you look at the issues that precede this, he was just at his wedding, and then Kraven's last hunt hits. Like he just didn't get any time to enjoy his wedding, his marriage. Mary Jane's like, how could I be married to this kind of guy? What have I done? What's going on? He's gone for 2 weeks. I just got married. What's going on? I think if we were reading it at the time live, like, if I was 10 or something at that time reading it, I'm expecting Spider-Man's happily ever after in the next issue. And instead I pick up this and Spider-Man's being shot and he's dead and Kraven's running around naked. Like, what? What's going on?
I mean, Kraven's absolutely insane in this. He's absolutely insane.
I liked about this the reason that Kraven's crazy, not just because he's eating spiders and dancing naked and everything, is because most of the reading that we do on all of these issues is people's thoughts, which is interesting, and they don't do that as much in the comics. And there's not the thought bubbles, but it's not a whole lot of dialogue, really. There's dialogue, but it's more often than not, it's the beautiful art, like Jared said, and there's these word squares that are just what they're thinking. And one issue, it's all Kraven. One issue, it's all Spider-Man. And it's just kind of goes back and forth between, and even when they do, even the letterer did a great job. It's like Kraven's, like, the wrong words are capitalized. There's words that are, it looks like it's written like a serial killer kind of thing. And I enjoyed Kraven. So I read this a few times. Just this past time I read it, and I don't want to demonetize anybody, so I'll say the idea of Kraven taking his own life. Is that better, Kevin?
Wow,
I don't know.
I couldn't believe that.
Probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it made more sense to me, even though obviously it never makes sense to anybody for anybody to do that. But just his line of thinking and his craziness was highlighted within the first few pages, which I just read before we started filming again, and him talking about how he came here 70 years ago. And he came here and he's been taking all these jungle herbs and medicines to keep his body young and physically able. But his mind is old and his spirit is old and he's tired. So it's like a story of a guy that can live forever, but he's just tired of it. So he wants to do one big last thing, catch the guy he always wanted to catch. And he does that. So he's like, I'm done. I can rest now because I don't want to live forever. I could, but I don't want to, which was an interesting big picture of it. You see, when I go back and read the first 10 pages of the story after having read the whole thing, I'm like, oh, I see what they were setting up that I didn't get at the end of it. You got to go back and read the beginning of it sometimes. Makes
Well,
more
and
sense.
also, some of his final words before he does the deed is, he's talking about his mother and how his mother had mental illness.
Right.
And so is this, even though he's lived this long, is her mental illness, did that affect him? Has that affected him his entire life? Is it genetic, or is it nature or nurture, really, like
Sure.
that drove him to this point? I think that I know this probably isn't the right adjective, but I think those last moments, those last panels are really beautiful, and the writing, how he describes the character's thought, it's really, really impressive.
Yeah, it definitely hits the notes it's aiming for. Tragically beautiful, I guess, would be right. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So
I don't know where to go with it. After that,
It's hard not to be a downer when talking about this story.
right.
and that's the hard part about it, because it is it's a very depressing series, but it's just done so well. Like, I liked it. It was very dark. It was certainly much darker, to your point earlier, than Maximum Carnage. I think so, even though Maximum Carnage is absolutely berserk too. But this one was just like, maybe it's just because it's such a smaller cast involved and things like that, and it's just a tighter story and everything. Sometimes it can get easy with all these crossover events and things like that, like Maximum Carnage. Things get lost and stuff. To have a good, solid story about something like this, and it's just a very genre specific storyline, that was pretty cool. I don't know.
You were right. It was a smaller cast. With Maximum Carnage, there was a lot of rando death and murder, so we weren't necessarily connected, but we were connected to Kraven, and he was talking us through his battle with mental illness and why he was doing what he was doing. We just had so much more insight into him, whereas in Maximum Carnage, it was just like cold-blooded death for no reason.
Well, even in Maximum Carnage, do we get a scene as chilling as what Darrin talked about earlier about the woman getting pulled into the sewers and just the look on her face?
Well, I mean, a woman did throw her baby off the building in Maximum Carnage, which is pretty horrible.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
That one, but okay.
Yeah, I think
Right.
the baby was saved.
I think the advantage this story has too, and I don't know if it's been done before or since, but you've got 3 different comic series with the same creative crew making 6 issues. So Maximum Carnage, I think there were 5 Spider-Man titles at that point, and there were 5 different artists, and there were 5 different writers, and so you're not going to get the cohesiveness. As I believe they probably sat down, wrote one different story, and Marvel just decided to say, okay, we'll have issue 1 and the one that comes out this week, and part 2 the next week, and whatever our scheduling is for the 3 Spider-Man titles, we're just going to put them right in a row, and that's going to be it. And it worked out. I'm sure it would have been, like you said, if you were collecting at that time and at that age, that's another advantage it has. It would have been able to come out in 2 months. You would have had the whole 6-part series, and it would have been every week or other week, you would get another episode into the story, which is a really nice thing to do. I wish they did more of that for consecutiveness and maybe even timeliness of the comic shipment. You could just say, let's put 6 away and we'll release them one at a time now, and while the next creative team works on the next 6 kind of thing. But
well, you have to remember too, at the time, like if you're thinking about like your kid picking this off the rack at your grocery store or something like that, there weren't a lot of superheroes at the time, especially at Marvel, that had 3 ongoing series, let alone 2. Like there was only Uncanny X-Men then, right? We hadn't split off into the X-Men and Uncanny at that point in time. So you have this series, or you have the storyline going across all 3 series, which strengthens the impact of it, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, Spider-Man's dead, right? Like if you're just reading it and you're a kid and you don't know, Spider-Man's dead. Like, and it's not until you get to that cover of issue of the 4th probably one of the most dramatic and dynamic covers that Mike Zeck ever drew of Spider-Man coming out of the ground. Do you finally have hope that Spider-Man's going to live? For the first 3 issues, okay, it's every series, and Spider-Man's dead in every series all of a sudden. So I think at the time it was probably very, very impactful, especially to kids reading it right off the shelf.
What cover was that? I wanted to talk about covers next because these covers were great. Web of Spider-Man number 32, the one out of the ground, right?
Yeah, it was what
Was
I
that
don't know the
32, I think?
number,
I
but
might
I
be
know it was
off.
Web
I
of
might be off.
Spider-Man.
It was a Web of Spider-Man though? All right.
It was, yeah, because
I think it was 32.
yeah, because it goes Web of Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man
man, that's such
is the order of the series. Yeah.
I like the I forget. I think it was man, the fifth out of the whole series, the one where it's got Kraven with a Jack Nicholson smile on his face, and Spider-Man's lurking up in a corner in the background. And that was a cool thing about this whole thing is like every time a lot of times when you see Spider-Man appear, since it was the black suit, not the symbiote suit, you saw those white eyes and this white spider sticking out everywhere, and it would just be complete darkness, like especially down in the sewer scenes and stuff. And then you see the white eyes and the white spider, and you knew he was there.
You knew he was there. I like it. No,
Yeah.
as I was reading this, I thought, oh man, back in my bodybuilding days, I had so many cosplay opportunities with this. I could have been Kraven with a little bit of hair and nothing else. Kraven in a thong. Kraven, like so many Kraven cosplays. I just let get away from me, man. Oh, John,
How's that mustache come in? Yeah.
John can do it for me.
You want? Well, I can't grow that good of a mustache. Look at, I mean, the other two guys we're talking to, they got the facial hair for Kraven, I think.
It's true.
Just got to be lazy for a few years. It'll come in.
Right.
Oh,
I'm afraid mine will come in white at this time. I don't have those jungle herbs keeping me young, so I got it.
I got them back in my woods. If I'm not getting poison ivy, I'm getting the jungle
Right,
herbs.
you took the wrong one.
Don't get
last
into those again. You knew what happened.
Yeah, I think I would encourage people to really go read The Tiger by William Blake, and then contemplate the scene where Mary Jane is about to get assaulted by a guy in calf-high socks and shorty shorts, and then Kraven comes and beats him up. It's especially in that scene to me, because The Tiger is all about, God created the lamb and he created the tiger, and it's contemplating, wrestling with the idea of why God allows evil to exist. Why does a good God allow evil to exist? It's kind of, that's what the poem is really wrestling with. So especially in that scene, I think it's a really, really interesting dichotomy with the poem. So I encourage people, if you really like this story, to go look into that. I mean, he's a great poet. It's a great little 7 stanza. You can read it in 2 minutes. It's great.
Yeah, I'd just say I really enjoyed the series overall. It did a few things like we talked about, the same creative team working on 6 issues for one story together was brilliant. The other thing it did that they don't do anymore is that this came out in '87. I think it had to be at least 10 years before Kraven came back to life, right? So that's something. It actually meant something for quite a while. We know he's been back around in comics since, but it was quite a while. When I started reading
It was
in the
post
early
Brand New
90s,
Day.
he's still dead. Yeah.
Post Brand New Day, they brought him back in the what was it? Joe Kelly did that series, did a storyline in the Amazing Spider-Man post Brand New Day. I can't remember what it was called. Where his family brings him back to life, basically.
Good, really good.
And then if you also like this, there's The Soul of the Hunter, the one shot that DeMatteis and Zeck did after this. And I think it's basically the equivalent of 2 issues in length. And it's really just the PTSD that Spider-Man is dealing with after this scenario. It was really, really good. Little short one shot, if you can find that.
All right.
All right. That was a great show. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Till next time, make yours the M6P.
Or Marvel 616 Politics.